Hello everyone, this is your host Jahidul Islam from Texas, and you are listening Inspire the Youth, Inspire the World podcast, the show that inspires youth to achieve their dreams and be willing to take on challenges to succeed in their life. Today we are going to listen to a veteran tech professional, Paul Grossman, who has worked in the industry for over 22 years and speaks at various conferences worldwide. He has been in the software QA testing domain for a long time and has served many companies. He is currently working as a QA manager for a company in Michigan. We will listen to how Paul started his journey into tech, his experience, and suggestions for the young professional fresher. We will ask him to share his wisdom with us so that we can learn without time traveling. We are honored to see you here. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing fine, Janelle. Thank you very much for inviting me as a guest. I appreciate the invite here, and I'm really honored to be asked to come over here and speak to your audience. Definitely like to inspire the youth and get the ideas and concepts of test automation out into the world.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate your time. It's almost weekend, long weekend starting, and you are taking your time. We cannot really thank you enough for your time. It has been it has been a few years since we met, right? I know enough about you, but please tell us something about you for our listeners.
Sure. To A little bit about me, I've been in the test automation field for about 22 years. I
Hmm.
have worked in a multitude of test automation tools, everything from starting from WinRunner, and most recently into WebDriver IO and
Hmm.
also Selenium. Um, the way and the interesting thing is the way that you and I met is that um, we I actually don't know everything. That some people assume that I know everything, and I actually have been working a lot in functional front end test automation, and I really didn't have any experience in API. I needed to get some API knowledge, and I bumped into you, and you were teaching some courses on APIs uh, and so a lot of the tools that are available for doing test automation in an area that I didn't know anything. And basically, we spent several weeks, a couple of months actually, working on getting me up to speed. If it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Still, so I appreciate all the the help and the personal work interaction that you had with me.
Oh, no, no, thank you. It was my privilege to, have someone, coach someone like you. Many people the people I mentored or coached, right? Many of them are fresher to the industry. Some of them are, experienced nowadays. Where when we teach DevOps programs, there we find some experienced people. But I think I never taught someone with your level of experience. So it was definitely a privilege for me to at least share my expertise or knowledge at that time. I think it was back in 2019, early 2019 or end of 2018, if I can remember correct. And actually, while I was interacting with you, that gave me a huge amount of boost at that time because I just realized that in tech you have huge option to grow even you are very much new, because it's definitely important, it's definitely good for someone being very long time in the industry, you have experience and things like that. But even you are young, you are new in the industry, if you can pick up things which is cutting edge, which is available currently, right? In the past it was not there, so not many people got opportunity to gain that expertise, right? So there is always scope for the newcomers. So that is something, actually one of the inspiration I got out of those sessions when I was teaching you, right? Because I was afraid at the beginning. Hey, what promise I made this gentleman? Am I going to deliver what I really promised him to deliver? But as I started with all these sessions, I found you are very, very curious and you really wanted to know, and it was working out. So I keep getting that confidence, right? So it was extremely helpful for me too, to be honest, at that
Good.
time.
That's
Um,
that's a good sign of a good relationship is when you're able to bounce ideas off each other and
mhm,
share and communicate on that. Um,
mhm, mhm. I see. Yeah. So, like, tell us something about your working experience. Like, since I know you have been long, long time here.
sure. Well, I'll tell you where I kind of started out when I was a young kid, not knowing what in the world I was going to think about doing. I basically started working in computers or with computers back when I was a teenager. I wanted a Commodore 64. That kind of tells you how old I was, how long I've been around. And actually, I wanted to let you know. Actually, I wanted a VIC 20. That was the first thing. Was I wanted a VIC 20. I thought that was a cool computer. And one of my cousins, who's an IT guy in our family, the
Mhm,
only IT guy, told me, "Hey, you got to get yourself a Commodore 64. You don't want that VIC 20. You know why? Because it's only got 20K of RAM on it. When you get that 64K of RAM, you're never going to need any more memory than 64K in your life." And I still tease my cousin about it to this day that he was a little off on the amount of RAM, but he certainly was right on getting more, not trying to limit yourself on stuff on that. So I learned early
mhm,
on was to really invest in myself, pay a little bit more extra money to get systems that are going to work well for you. And in fact, the system that you're watching me right on this is a MSI computer. I spent a little bit more money on it in order to get more RAM, more CPU. It's a faster. It's actually a gaming system, but I don't use it
mhm,
for gaming. I intentionally bought it for doing virtual machines, so it had a lot more heft than your standard off the shelf laptop.
mhm,
Um, I'll tell you a little bit more about my history. After I got that Commodore 64, I got an Amiga, started playing with that. I became a college lab assistant, and I was doing a
mhm,
help desk for the for a call center company for a while, and that was basically my first job. Um, and
mhm,
I learned how to code in BASIC. Again, it was VB6, and
mhm,
I didn't realize, there were other languages out there, but there was a compiler, and I really didn't know where executables came from. I thought executables came from above and were just delivered here. And then the day I realized I can make an executable, I'm like, oh, hey, this is cool. This is something new I can do. It's really cool. Um, from there, I've worked for
mhm.
companies like a video editing manufacturer back in 1999. Uh,
Oh.
if anyone's ever seen TiVo, we actually basically had the technology for TiVo, but we didn't know what to do with it. But it was fun working there, and I just sat there and just edited movies together. I'd take Elf and Top Gun and just edit them both together to make my own version of some weird movie just to test the hardware. And that's the big thing is I love testing stuff. I love trying to, can I make it do this? Can I make it do that? Uh, and that's my whole passion in life is just testing stuff. And that led me to my first big break, was being a manual tester for a medical device manufacturer, automating
Mhm.
X-ray machines.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you a little bit more about that if you want. Um,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be great. Like, yeah,
sure.
you can definitely, yeah.
Well, it's strange. Everybody in the industry has a different weird story of how they get in. At least in the test automation field, there's strange stories that are going on. In this case,
Mhm,
what happened was I was curious about an automation tool I saw. It was called Windrunner. I actually have it sitting right up here. I still have the software. I'll even show you guys that. And that's my software. I held on to it. It's my little lucky charm, and they even gave me a little cup to go with it. Company's no longer in existence, but I hold on to that. It's kind of cool.
You can
I
keep it because you can sell it later on as
yeah,
antique piece. It will
well,
be very expensive or something.
yeah, this guy, Captain Mercury. This is another thing. I got this for answering a whole ton of QA questions on the website for Mercury.
Hmm.
If I'd been smart, I would have bought 10 of them because that's how many points I had. But I'm like, oh, I just need one. Um, but the way I started out was that I was using this tool and I tried to automate a game site. It's still around. It's called pogo.com. I didn't work for them. It was just a little project I gave them myself. And I said, let's see if I can get there was a slot machine on there, and the game is set up to for the player to win. That's all it really is. It's not really gambling. There's there's fake coins that you get, but it's set up unlike a real casino. It's you click on it, you'll always get coins off the thing. All I had to do was figure out how to click in one spot. And then there was another one where you had to play Turbo 21, which was basically four hands of blackjack. And from that, I was trying to figure out if I could count the cards out of the whole thing. And I actually got the code to play a perfect game at one point. This was back in about 2000. And unfortunately, I didn't have a video of it, but I did have a screen capture. So I thought that was kind of cool. Next day, I walk into
Hmm.
my office, and my manager is looking at our systems, and I happen to be doing we had a systems that would take about 4 minutes to shut down and then 4 minutes to come back up. I mean, they were really hefty machines back in 2000, much bigger than this thing. And because I had
Hmm.
8 minutes of nothing to do, I was basically practicing magic tricks with a rope and trying to see if I could put a knot in a rope for 8 minutes.
Hmm.
And that's the moment my manager walked in. And she looked at me and she said, "Is it possible you could be doing something a little bit more productive than doing rope tricks here in the lab?" Now the only thing is about the whole thing in your life is you're going to find points where there is perfect timing. And if you can take advantage of timing, that's great.
Hmm.
She had perfect timing. She walked in and that system was just coming down off that 4 minute shutdown. And then there was like about 4 seconds and it was set on a, uh, yeah, it was just coming down to the last 4 seconds before it shut down. And I said, yeah, I can do something. I'm going to do my finger test. I'm going to shoot my little machine over here. And I like that. And the whole system went black screen, whole thing's dead, power off, lights off. And she's like, is it
Hmm.
supposed to do that? And I said, no. Snap my fingers and the machine lights all came back on. Everything started coming back up. And it's because we had what we call a UPS, a uninterruptible power supply, which when it
Hmm.
detected the system was turned off, it would turn it back on. So the system was always on in our lab. So I knew that because I had rebooted this thing probably 100 times in the first year that I'd been there. I knew the timing perfectly, but she
Hmm.
didn't. And she was like, I'm not coming in here anymore. The next day, I walk into her office and I said, I saw this automation tool sitting here. And I was wondering maybe if I could join the automation team because I think that's kind of fun. And I showed her the stuff I'd done on the game site, and
Hmm.
she put me on a team. And the thing was, what I didn't know is that the four people on the team, one had retired, one had moved to a different department, and the other two were basically doing other work in different areas. The whole project was defunct. She made me the head of a project that had nobody on it, and she said, "Good luck." She's like, "You know who the expert is?" I'm like, "Who's that?" He says, "You are because you opened the box." Okay, I guess I'm the expert now. I kind of suspect she was trying to get me off because she didn't like that magic trick I did, but I absolutely I praise her for what she did. She put me on the right track, got me in the right area, and that's where my starting point was in QA. That's how I got.
Oh,
That's the crazy story of everything started going on from
this
there.
is definitely crazy story. Like, this is interesting because you didn't plan for it. You had that curiosity, I would say, like huge enough of curiosity, and then maybe you had intention to get things done and see the result, right?
Yeah,
And you made that observation of that machine for a long period of time, right? Then you decided, you came up with that number, the time periods, and then the backup procedures, that how can you really restart it. right after the shutdown, right? So
Right.
that shows that you're sorry, yeah, that shows that you have been investing your time and you are so curious about this type of stuff, right? It is a kind of automation, right? You are doing an automation, in other word, right? Instead of manual restart, you are doing that one automatically.
Well,
Yeah, sorry,
that
I was cutting
yeah.
you off.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That actually led to the next thing is what I try to tell young people is the most important thing. People tell you what's important. How many test cases did you automate? How many bugs did you find? That's really not the important thing. The real important thing is what we call ROI, which is return on investment. And what I
Mm-hmm,
found the return on investment on that project was finding bugs that and reproducing bugs that were just nobody could figure out what was going wrong. And
mm-hmm,
the next bug we found, the first bug we found was that when we reset our computer, occasionally it would not power up. It had a little count up clock, and if it got to 93, then the system would come up and show you the desktop and all that stuff, and you're all ready to go. If it went to
mm-hmm,
94, it would go to 99, sit there and spin and do nothing. And nobody could figure out why that would occur and how to replicate it because they very rarely would hear about it. So they asked me, they said, can you do this automation? Can you make the system shut down and then come back up again? And I'm like, well, I don't know how to get it back up again when all the power is shut down. But then I remembered we had that one system that could come back up because the plug on the back would power it up if you shut it down. And it occurred to me, I'm like, I could write 4 lines of code, increment a file that's got a counter from 1 to 2, shut down the system. When the system shut down, it would automatically come back up. And inside the start menu, I'm putting my hands in front of my face here. Inside our start menu, we would launch our automation tool, which would launch the script that would increment 2 to 3 and shut the system down and repeat and repeat. What we found was that every 63rd reboot, it would die. It would count up to 99 and sit there and not do anything.
oh,
They
that's the
developers figured the developers looked at it. First they said it's the automation tool that's causing this. And I'm like, I don't think so. If it was, it would be doing it every time. They finally looked at it and they said, oh, you know what? 3 developers actually came together to create this bug. We found it. This is kind of cool. One guy had a counter that started at 1. And then every time
Mhm,
you restarted internally, he was counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A second developer said, hey,
mhm.
the second developer said, oh, wait, that number might someday get up to like, a gazillion and it'll eat up all the memory and the whole system will go down and nobody will know why. So when we get to 63, we're going to reset it to 0. And the third developer said, hey, if this number is ever 0, we're in a bad state. So don't do anything. So it was basically every 64th reboot, that system was dead. And I was able to replicate that on that. And that's basically where we started out with. And that was the return on investment. They couldn't figure out what was the pattern that caused it. But our automation team, me leading the automation team, that was our first big win. And the developers started getting a little respect for, having a little respect for what I did. 20 years ago and even today, people will say, hey, you're not really an automation. You're not a coder. You're not a developer. Um, you don't really. I mean, it's just record and playback. Don't listen to that. It is not record and playback. It is development. It does require a good technical ability to do what you need to do. And
Mhm,
we are on the
mhm,
same par with developers. We use the same tools as developers. So if anyone ever tells you that automation engineer working in test automation is not a developer, they're the ones who are not a developer. They're certainly not an SDAT. Uh, so
yeah,
that's
that's
the first thing you learn as a young person out here is that not everything people tell you is going to be true. It's just people saying, oh, you're doing better than me. I'm going to try and tear you down. Don't let people tear you down. Be positive about yourself.
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, often I tell this like so the program we run, right, QA program, one of the QA programs. So when people come in, um, this is one of my first suggestions to people, right? Don't think about your role, title, QA, testing, right? Think about from a different perspective. As a whole, you are coming into a software engineering industry and you are trying to learn how to deal with a software.
Hmm.
So you are really learning. If you just focus on how to deal with that, then you are going to actually put yourself in trouble. If you understand this thing as a whole, like in all these components properly, the way a builder thinks, a developer thinks, right? You are making these things up, then your mind, your vision is not going to be narrow, right? So if you just think about being QA and being testing in testing, your vision it becomes a tunnel vision, right? It's not a
Yeah.
wide. So then you start feeling that, bad feelings, right? I would say, hey, you start feeling a little bit bad, right? That you may not be knowing much things and things like that. You start feeling yourself a little low, right? How can you really gain this confidence if you understand each components of a software engineering? Then you have a, because you are not going to build that specific software, that is true, but we are going to build test automation tools and toolings in order to test those applications. At the end of the day, you are coding, you are writing code, but
Yep.
your purpose of writing code is different. But it doesn't make you, something, someone with a low profile. Your profile is still high, still you are well paid. Why companies are well paying you? Because you have that quality. But the thing is that, I think the QA community, many of these QA engineers or testers, they have that, narrow vision of looking into only testing aspect, not thinking in a wider perspective, right? So
Yep.
that puts people a little bit, in back foot, because even you are a QA engineer, you should understand how software is being built and all the components, right? Not only your testing part. And then
Hmm.
it makes you confident in a room when you are talking with senior engineers, maybe mid-level engineers, or maybe leaderships, right? From every different teams, maybe from development team, from DevOps team, or maybe some system design team, right? So you really can absorb the discussion and you feel yourself inclusive in that environment, right? So I definitely echo with your things, right? That being a test automation engineer, you have the full understanding of, you should have full understanding, you should be technical, you should have that understanding of coding, and then be able to automate things and be proud of your work, right? So
And
yeah.
also learn from the people around you. Now, I find that test automation engineers, we don't. There's not really a school, an IT school for teaching what we do. I mean, we write code, we work in different languages and stuff, but there's not an IT school. So the best thing that you can do is find a good mentor in the development side. Make friends with them. I know it's for
Mhm.
years when you talk about QA and developers, it's kind of adversarial. It's like we're going to throw this feature over the transom, and you got to test it, and then we found the bug, and we throw it back. Oh, you ruined my weekend. Now I got to go fix it. Um, you really have to work hard from our side is to kind of have a friendly thing and work with the developers and say, hey, listen, I want you to help me make this tool better. I mean, seriously, my goal isn't out there to find bugs or to prove that the developers are bad at what they do. My ultimate
Mhm.
goal when I try and do it is to prove that the software is good, it's working correctly. If there's a defect, we found it quickly and we cleared it out, and that
Mhm. Mhm.
our developers are actually doing a really good job at what they do. They get their job right 98% of the time, and it's us just catching the 2% that takes care of that. If you put that in that perspective, you're like, hey, the QA guys are really catching the stuff that's really possibly going to that we don't know about, but on the grand scale of things, if we've got a million customers, 2% of
Mhm.
those guys are going to have problems. We're going to lose money. Uh, if their developers are 98% good at what they're doing, hey, that's a lot of money that we're already taking care of on our bottom line. So the other thing
Mhm.
is in ROI, when you're talking to your managers, try not to focus on bugs and focus on how much money did you save the company because you found something that is really tricky and hard to reproduce,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
people just don't know that the company's losing money until you're able to point it out and say, hey, there's this one little thing. If there's
Mhm.
as one developer once, I quote, you see that button there, the reason we're having problems is that nobody should be ever clicking that button. And I always wondered, why did you put the button there in the first place? I've worked for a client. They had stand-ups right in front of my desk, and I would be sitting there writing stuff down. You can see behind me there is, if I point my thing, you can see all these books up on the shelf, and somewhere in that things of books there is a story, and many stories. One of which is, we shouldn't be nobody should ever be clicking that button. Like, why did you put it there? Everything else works great. The other 99 buttons work great. That one, why'd you put it there? I don't know. But it's
Yeah.
make it fun. Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And as a team, in a team, we all work for a same goal, right? Delivering good product and meeting the timelines, and be able to give value to the company, right? Because they're
Yep.
paying you. They're spending money behind you. They have expectations and things like that. So yeah, we all work for one goal. We all have our own responsibilities, right? But definitely, we should improve our mindset and our way of seeing things, and should not feel low. We should feel proud of our work, and we should
Yeah.
definitely learn things, right? Without knowledge, no one is going to pay you respect, whatever, even you are shouting, right? The example you were talking about, the automation you made, right? After 63 reboot, you identified there is a problem,
Yep.
that actually you earned your respect from your team members, right?
I did.
So if
Yeah.
yeah, so it is an example for many folks, those who are QA engineers. Many of them actually come back and says that, Jahidul, I feel like I'm not valued and things like that. Definitely you may feel like that, but it is you who has to earn value among your team members, right, in that environment. That's what I feel. And that's people's knowledge and
Yeah.
and then yeah.
There's going to be a time where you find two or three things, and they're going to say, how in the world how did you find that? How did you figure that out? And it could take a couple of times. In fact, that first job I had, we found that
Mhm.
loop. We found a couple of, oh yeah. The next thing they wanted us to do is to have the system just continuously do acquisitions, do X-rays over and over again. By the way,
Mhm.
those were all simulated. I was nowhere near a real live lab. There's a whole different story we don't have time to get into. I do not automate live X-ray labs. It's not a good idea. But we were working in
Mhm.
simulators, and the thing is that we just kept getting a new patient, create a new patient, take an X-ray, send it off on the system. And when we automated that, within 20 minutes, the system basically broke down, and we were tracking the memory. It turned out we had a memory leak. It was just eating up all the memory. They looked at it,
Mhm.
they found it, they fixed it, and they're like, now it's good. And we tried again. And now instead of after 15 minutes, it took 2 hours, and the memory kept going up, and it died again after 2 hours. They fixed it again. Now we've got it. Third time, at that point, it took 8 hours until the system ate up all the memory. After that third time, it was like, okay, I think we found all the bugs, but keep looking. And after that, the system would run 24/7, just basically just adding more stuff in. System stayed stable. That was one of our biggest things where we got a lot of credit from the developers. We're like, okay, this isn't record and playback stuff anymore. These guys are actually finding some interesting things. And then the
Mhm.
last
Mhm.
the last thing was their again, at that point they did say, well, it's probably the automation tool that's doing this. The last thing that we did was that we were sending data over across the network, but occasionally
Mhm.
the screen that we had, it was always a skull, but occasionally it was like a badly tuned TV. And they said,
Mhm.
how can we, what's causing that? And we had actually six systems, and they allowed me to
Mhm.
turn three of them off. Actually, we turned all of them off, and we just had one system for a day, constantly taking acquisitions and sending it off to a system we call the black hole that would just take data in and shut it down. Now, I put my automation tool on the black hole and said, hey, if this ain't a skull, send me an email. Ran it for a whole day, a day and a half, nothing, no emails, no thought. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wrote it wrong. Something's wrong here. It has to pick this up because we see it almost every 2 days. And my
Mhm.
manager said, we can't have the systems down. We need to be doing HALTS testing, which is high and low temperature testing. We need everything back up. I'm like, okay. So we turned on all six systems. We got manual testers working on four of them. I got two automation tools working on two of them. We've got the black hole sitting out there. And within 15 minutes, I got an email that said, hey, we just got a badly tuned TV. We didn't get the skull. And I got excited. And it didn't come off the same system. We had six. And the first time we found it was off of system 2. Second we got with time we got it system 5. The developers went and looked at that, and they said, you know what it was? Is that when you all of you are working so hard on that, you're actually using up all the bandwidth of the network. And when all the bandwidth of the networks, there's one little bit of code that says, hey, drop off that first bit off of that image. And everything shifts over to the left. And then your image becomes just a static TV rather than a skull. Like, that's great. But there was one guy in the back room when I duplicated it, he said, yeah, you know what I think it is? I think it's that automation tool that's causing that. And the lead developer comes over to me and goes, Paul, he's the new guy. So we already know that if you found something, it's definitely something on our side. We're going to go fix it. We trust you. And that's the thing. That's the whole thing about it. The whole point is that people aren't going to believe you're in you until you're able to kind of prove that, hey, yeah, I've got, I'm a valuable thing here. And, make use of the tools and the capabilities I've got, and people will be convinced. And that's where your self-worth and stuff. When someone will do it, they'll come up and say, man, nobody thought on how to do this, and you figured it out. And the more important thing is also put that out into the world. Be positive with other people. That's the other important thing. Tell other people if they tell them they're doing a good job. That's an important thing.
Yeah, I can't agree anymore. Right, you say the very true things. Right, gain respect and be respectful to others. Just to have really right environment, what we are expecting, because we always expect a good place, a place where we are valued, a place where we are safe, a place where we feel comfortable, right? And it is not a one-way street, it is a two-way street. We can't just expect things to come in our table until we don't put something in some other people's table, right? So you're very correct, so right, let's so you have been like working for a while and for a long period of time, right? See, most of us have ups and downs in our careers, right? Tell us your struggling part of the career. It could be a strategic struggle, a struggle we face in life, and it could be technical or professional struggle. The reason why I really want to understand or know some of your struggle is because when a successful person always not successful, if we can look back our failures or our problems or struggles, right? I think we always have a lesson to learn. And also for someone who is listening, for them also there shall be some lesson to learn. So I'm very much interested to understand or to know some of your struggle.
Sure. Well, one of the more important things, part of an agile process that we have is the when we do a retrospective and we look back and say, hey, what went right and what went wrong and what can we do that's better. I can tell you a couple of things. One of my first struggles was at the end of my first project. We were going good. I just gave you the 3 things. Everybody loved this. And near the end, there was another team that came aboard, and they said, hey, we got another automation tool. And they were basically a rival team that was going to replace what I was already doing. And it made me feel, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I need to try and prove to these people as well. I already got the developers. I already got the project manager, the vision manager, all on my side, but now I got to prove to these guys that my tool is doing really well. On their side, it was a brand new. The tool was 6 months old. My project was 4 years old, and they said, "Oh, and the big thing is that the tool's free." And I'm like, "Okay, well, does it take screen captures when there's? Well, not yet, but we're going to get that. Okay, is it able to figure out when the page is built so it doesn't go faster and trying to find an element that hasn't been built? Well, yes, it's going to get there eventually. Now, these are good ideas. Write them down. Tell us what we need to put in there." I'm like, oh, that was one of my biggest challenges. And in that case, that was at the end of my project. I actually moved on to another client. In some cases, you can't solve it. I really don't have a good solution for that. Other challenges we've got. is basically a change of technology. This tool over here,
Mm-hmm.
this was C++, but it got Deep Six. It's no longer available. I had to learn a brand new language. So my challenge was, how do I already know this stuff on how to do it in C++, but now I got to do it in VB script with UFT.
Mm-hmm.
How do I've got 4 years of knowledge of C++. How do I change that into another language? One of the way I got over that challenge, and I've got these on my computer systems here, I call them Rosetta Stones. So over the course of your career in automation, you're going to do the same thing over and over again. I'm going to click on a button. I'm going to try and find it dynamically. I'm going to see how long a page builds, but in different languages. But you're always going to do the same thing. So the trick that I do is I write these Rosetta Stones. I know how to do this in C++, C++, C++. Now I'm going to spend some time learning how to do it in VB script, VB script, VB script. If my project changes, and it does, my language changes, my
Mm-hmm.
underlying language, it's changed to VB script to Java, and then I went to JavaScript,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm back at Java. Same thing. I just take what I know. I got the little screen code bits, and I start rewriting them so I can do it. And of course, this brings up something really interesting that's really big in the technology world today, which is something called ChatGPT, Open API.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody's talking
Mm-hmm.
about it. Some people think it's a bunch of baloney. Other people are like it's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm the sliced bread kind of guy, because the cool thing that you can do with that is you can take the code that you've written in some other language, like I know C++, and tell it, take this code and convert it to VB script. And it's actually, or change it to Java, change it to JavaScript. It actually does a really good attempt at that. It's much better than what I've seen 10 years ago. They used to have a tool that would do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's fast, it's smart, it's relatively accurate. So that's one way to kind of get over, if you don't want to spend 6 months trying to relearn a whole new language, utilize whatever tool is available to you. Um, I'll give you another example of another tool. Let's say you change languages. You know how to do this in C++, but now we got to do it in Java. This is the only
Mm-hmm.
time I ever recommend a record and playback tool. Yes, there is record and playback. It's not what you use to create stuff day to day. I don't do it day to day. But if I change to a brand new tool, I will do a record and playback just so I can see what is the code that I have to write. What's the syntax? Do I have to have semicolons at the end of it? Is it like JavaScript where I don't necessarily have to have semicolons? How do I create a dictionary where I knew how to do that in Java? And how do I create a dictionary in JavaScript?
Mm-hmm.
A record
Mm-hmm.
playback tool will give you how to click, how to interact with stuff. And by the way, GPT, you can tell it what tool you're using, and it will know the syntaxes of it. So if you're working in, let's say, Cypress, you can tell it, write the code in Cypress. Or you can tell it, oh, I'm writing the code in WebDriver IO. Use that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's my major changes. Every let's say I worked in VB Script for 14 years. So I was very comfortable there. But it
Mm-hmm.
seems like it's like every 4 to 6 years, I have to change to another language, and work on that.
Okay, so here is a very interesting question, I would say.
Okay.
Give me a prediction, right? After 5 years, what you're going to learn?
Prediction. Boy, I wish I had my predicting hat around here. Well, I tell you what, let me put on my predicting mask. We'll pull this out. By the way, have a little fun with automation, okay? So there we go. I am going to put on my predicting hat. Changes that are going to come up in WebDriver IO. That's a tool. Changes that are going to come up. One of the changes I'm going to say is we're going to go into plain English, where we're going to find tools that allow manual testers to do the automation, but without having to learn Java or Ruby or whatever the languages that are out there. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
our automation tools are going to get replaced by any of that. I think it's going to become an interaction where we have the manual testing team. Let me try that again, just not cover up my face. Where we have
Mm-hmm.
the manual testing team using one tool that's easy to write, but maybe a little bit slower to execute, and then the developer team writing scripts that are taking a little bit more time to write to get them right, but they execute faster. Put those
Mm-hmm.
together, you've got a great formidable task and a formidable team to do that. And right now,
Mm-hmm.
I hope if I can mention, there's two tools I've seen out there that have really impressed me. There
Mhm.
is test rigger, and it's basically
Mhm.
the programming language is this: click the add to cart button, and boom, it finds it. There's also a similar named tool out there called Test Sigma, which does
Mhm.
very similar things, and it all runs on the cloud. Um, and it's all
Mhm.
virtualized, and you can do previous versions of browsers and operating systems. That's where you can
Mhm.
really expand on that. That's where I think we're going to go. But to harken back to the first thing I learned when I became an automation engineer, the first thing was
Mhm.
all my manual tester friends, they didn't want to be friends with me anymore because they thought I was going to automate them out of a job. Like, no, no. But I invented this one script. It was called we had a test, and everybody knew it as the FNG test. Stands for freaking new guy. When the freaking new guy
Mhm.
shows up, he's going to sit there and push a button about 500 times so he can fill up the drive space so he can test that while everybody else went to lunch for an hour. I wrote a script that automated that, and now the freaking new guy could come and be have lunch with everybody else, and they liked me for that because nobody wanted to do that test. So I got my friends back as manual tester. Now let's jump ahead 22 years into the future. Over here, it's today.
Mhm.
The thing is,
Mhm.
we got these automation tools, and they're written in plain. You can write code in plain English. Is that going to replace our developers? No, no.
No.
We will always have
No.
developers. We'll always need manual testers. We'll always need some
Mhm.
visual way to look at stuff, and
Mhm.
it doesn't get rid of anybody.
The shapes are going to change, right? I think here is
Yeah,
the important thing I can maybe ask you
yeah.
about your experience from your experience, right? Like, I think you mentioned a bit. I want to be very explicit here. What challenges you think QA manual testers, right, QA analysts in the industry, current industry, going to face in coming days? What is your prediction on that?
Manual testers, they're everyone's going to ask you to be a developer. It basically goes back to when are you going to decide you want to move into being a developer and ask that. As I
Mm-hmm.
said, manual testers is going to go away, but there is, as I said, there's two paths. You could go into development. Not everybody wants to write code. Not everybody's excited about doing this. And I don't I don't
Mm-hmm.
blame you. It's not for everybody. I do public
Mm-hmm.
speaking. It's not for everybody. There's like maybe 5% of the people in the world like to get up and talk in front of a bunch of people. Everyone else is like, I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather sit in the audience. um, it's the same thing with manual testers. Is that you're always going to be needed. You don't necessarily have to follow the path to become an automation engineer. You can be a fantastic manual tester
Mm-hmm.
because we've got manual testers. You just have there's a whole different way of thinking about stuff, of interacting with an application.
Mm-hmm.
If you get excited about, you broke something, and then you spent an hour trying to figure out what's the path of everything that I did to go and replicate that. That's not
Mm-hmm.
something that ChatGPT, that's not something that any sort of automation tool is going to be able to do natively out of the box. They need manual
Mm-hmm.
testers to say, hey, this is the way it goes. So don't worry about that. And as I said, there is a secondary path. If you don't want to be in coding, but you still want to get into automation, look at a codeless or low code or no code tool as an option, um, and
Mm-hmm.
go from there. Although I don't know of anything that's open source at the moment that's low code
Mm-hmm.
tools. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so you have to prove again. It goes back to ROI. You have to prove your ROI to tell the company, hey, if you give me this
This is
tool,
working.
you'll find a lot of stuff better. I'm going to save you more money on the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of our audience has asked a question, right?
Okay.
Is age a barrier to learning, especially in IT?
Is there a barrier to learning? Yes.
No, no. Is age
Oh,
age is a
age.
factor?
I'm
This is
sorry.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
age? Is there age
Mhm,
a barrier to it? Well, I'm going to give. I didn't answer, and it's going to be the same answer. Um, as you get older, it becomes a little bit more trickier to try and learn new stuff. But the way around
mhm,
that is the same thing I've been doing all my life, and which is the trick is make it fun. So I'll give you an example. It's not
mhm,
automation. I know how to play the guitar a little bit. I can
mhm,
pull out a song, a recognizable song. I can play "Horse with No Name" on a guitar, and I could also play on a piano. The trick
mhm,
is that when I first took piano lessons, they were having me play songs I didn't know. and I didn't care for it. I had no interest in it. They had me playing what they called the sea shanty. I knew the title, it was called Sea Shanty, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the cadence, how things went, and it bored me, and I didn't spend the time to learn it. But I had another music book, which was the music of Billy Joel. I loved Billy Joel, and I could play with two hands. I would spend hours trying to pick out how to play Piano Man with that. And my music teacher said, "Boy, if you had spent the hours on the sea shanty as you did on Piano Man, you'd be great." And I'm like, "I don't even know how the song goes." And then she said, "Oh, it's like this." I'm like, "Oh wait, that's the song for Popeye. Oh, I know that song. Well, actually, now I can play it. Now that I know it, I can play it. Why didn't you play it in the first place?" Oh man. Same way to learn Spanish. I'm going to tell everybody the secret of learning Spanish. Okay. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
First thing is, there's only one sentence in Spanish you need to know to learn all of Spanish, and actually, it's any
Wow.
language, and that is, uh, uh, let's see, it's "Cómo se dice?" Yeah, what's this word I know in Spanish I can say in Spanish? Oh, this is going to be bad. Okay, yes, okay. I'll say, ¿cómo se dice fingers in español? And they'll say, "Oh, it's diaros." "Oh, diaros in español." Oh, okay, cool. The second thing is make it fun by saying, learning a magic trick and saying, "Okay, cuánto diaros? Cuánto diaros in total? How many fingers do I have in total?" And you'll say, it's once, right? It's once, 11. What do you mean? Wait, you said 10? Diaz? No, 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 no. Look. See, ¿cuánto diaros? Cinco. See? Five, cinco, cuatro, tres, dos, uno, y uno más. Cinco y cinco y uno más. 11. Don't say 11 fingers. Make
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. If you see that there's a barrier to something, make it fun. Like I said, my first automation
Mm-hmm.
thing, I really didn't care about. I didn't like coding all that much, but I thought it was like magic that I could make that pogo.com thing play. And it was
Mm-hmm.
basically a game. So find a game and go out and go play with it. I'm going to give another little shout out to anyone who wants to learn one of 22 programming languages. Check out Code in Game. It's got an
Mm-hmm.
IDE, it's got a development. You write code on it and stuff, but it's also got a little game embedded. And if you write the code correctly, the game's solved.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. Just whatever it is, make it fun. That's the
I
secret. And
agree.
even as
I
you get
100%
older,
agree with you.
yeah,
Yeah. This is a this is right way to you pinpointed a very correct thing, right? Finding interest, finding it fun, right? You need to feel excited, you need to find something in it, right, that will keep you attracted and motivated to be involved and to learn, to work hard, right? Because if you don't find interest and fun in a work, and then even it is highly rewarding, no way you are going to be encouraged, right? So no matter which age group you are in, I'm sorry, I just lost my mic.
it's okay.
Headphone. Yeah. So no matter how old you are, no matter what is your age group and your background, if you want to learn something new, the first thing, as Paul mentioned, is to find some interest on it, right? To have some fun on it, right? And then commit on it, right? You have to commit some time, some effort, right? Learning is not you cannot just learn something by sleeping, right? We have to work, and we have to really work hard in a smart way to learn something new. It could be any industry, it could be IT industry, it could be some other industry, but you can definitely learn in any age, most of these industries, right? But again, right, finding that interest and moving in a right direction, with right recipes, right prescription.
Right.
Sometimes you want to learn something new, but we do not have that recipe or prescription in hand, right? If you do not have the right prescription, you do not know which steps to follow first, and then which steps to follow last, right? And then you end up with burning lots of fuel and end up with frustration. So finding right recipe or prescription is absolutely important in order for you to learn something new. You can find that prescription by yourself, making lots of research and findings, talking to your friends. You can take help from people like Paul, someone who is experienced in the industry, or someone who walked through that path, right? Then like if you go to, some mountains and some places, you take tour guide. Why? Because they know that areas, so they, within a short amount of time, they can actually show you the entire area, as because they are experienced in that part of the world, right?
Mhm.
Same goes with learning something new, right? You should have that guidelines in front of you, and then you should commit your time. Yeah, thank you for Paul answering that,
Sure.
question. Yeah. Excuse me.
Um,
um all right, so yeah, we are, I think we'll be a little over than what we planned for 1 hour. I think we really want to discuss some more important things or interesting thing with you. um
It looks like we might have 10 more minutes. I'm looking at, we've been live for 50, so we may have 10 minutes left.
yeah. Yeah, so it's fine. It's okay. We are good. As long as we like, we talk. That's our policy. So yeah, so you must have, come across many young individuals throughout your professional life, right? Tell us your experience working with young folks.
Uh, they know so much more than I do. That's that's the thing, is that they've already taken courses and classes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff has already changed and changed in there. People come up and they'll say, "Oh, um, have you been working in they'll mention all sorts of the new tools or security. Have you worked in security? Have you tried doing some sort of a SQL injection and tools that can find that?" I've never had a chance to work with that, and it's like I need to learn what you've got, and then I can teach you what I know, and then together we can be a lot better at that. So
Mm-hmm.
the the uh, the other thing that I would say is that when I work with the young kids is that I know we don't have a lot of money on us, right? So the important the one sometimes it becomes this like I need a tool that's free. I always need a free tool that I need to use in order to learn what I have. However, there are times you should consider investing in yourself. Something I do when I've just come off, I will tell you guys, I just came off 3 months of unemployment. But one of the things I do is that I will invest in the training and stuff that I've got. Udemy
Mm-hmm.
just 3 months ago said, "Hey, instead of buying one course at a time, would you be interested if you paid us like $300 and then you can have any course you want for the year?" And I went, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's a no brainer. I've already spent $300 on a bunch of courses, and I just looked for like one bit. This worked out really great. I mean, I'm yes, I'm unemployed. I have an emergency fund, but this is something that's important to put in." So to
Mm-hmm.
get back to the point is that when you're young, um, uh, consider investing your own money in something that's definitely going to pay you benefits in the future. Um, if that means you get a different coding environment, or you get yourself a computer like mine over here that I've spent a little bit more money just to make it sure that it's going to last me a long time. It's got enough space. It's not going to get filled up. That's what I tend to tell young people, and then in exchange, I'm like, "All right, now tell me about these new tools that you've come across. What's this Chat GPT? What are all these things that you've learned
Mm-hmm.
about in school um, that I may not know about?" When I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, I actually have a degree from an art school, so I don't really brag about that, but we are a feeder school for Pixar. So if you've seen Way of Water, one of my friends actually did some automation on Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we our math classes were over the top. And somewhere on the
Mm-hmm.
shelf over here is an iDrive. Uh, it was uh, a new technology where it was like a floppy drive, but it could hold as much as a hard drive as a disk that you put on there. iOmega was the name of it, and I would never have known about it if I hadn't gone to college. And everybody had one of these things. Can't find them today;
Mm-hmm.
they're ancient relics. But it's the knowledge that you learn from kids in college that are just coming out of them saying, "Hey, everybody had this brand new thing, and everybody had it in their backpack. You should try it." So That's my answer to that
Mhm.
on with young kids working with young kids.
I see. I see. That's nice. So, you have been working as a, you are a people manager, right? You work as a QA manager.
Yep.
What would be your suggestion for someone who would like to pursue a similar role, want to be people manager, maybe in the industry as a working as a QA or some other similar role? Um, tell me your suggestion for them.
For being a people manager, well, I would say I've already mentioned focusing on metrics and ROI. Um, but the other important thing is giving people credit, making sure that they know
Mm-hmm.
that they were an important part of the team. Highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll even say, I may have written something that I worked with somebody else, and I'll say this person figured it out. They knew
Mm-hmm.
how it worked. They've got an idea, and give them some credit. Make them feel good about just about any little thing, and then they're more willing to do stuff more with you. I'm not the kind of manager who's going to come over and say, "Hey, listen, I've been waiting like 2 weeks for this code to come over here. You still haven't worked on it. Uh, what's going on? You got to get." Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that sort of that whole
Yeah.
thing. It's more, "Hey, tell me what can I do to help you out? I can give you some suggestions. I've been doing this 22 years. Tell me your issue. I'm going to try and work with you to get things working so that at our next stand up meeting, at our next demo, I can point to you and say, hey, this is some cool
Mm-hmm.
stuff this guy came up with."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah. No, no, this is, I always feel it, to be honest. I have worked in different industries, right? I worked in merchant marine for a long period of time, 10 years about, and then I moved to software engineering, right, later on. So I have seen like very different environment across many of these industries, right? So when you see something like, when you see like different things, it is easy for you to compare, right? If you're always in a environment same, a positive or negative, it is hard for you to really distinguish,
Yep.
right? Definitely, in a work environment, being a people manager is definitely important that we appreciate people. Even in a regular role, we can appreciate our coworkers, any of our coworkers we work with, right? Because everyone is contributing to some extent, to some way, right? Someone is maybe helping you to solve some problem by 30 minutes, and they expect, not they expect, they deserve credit. And that credit, when you give them publicly in a meeting, in a situation where everyone knows that, hey, he has helped me on solving this issue, right? That makes that person comfortable better, and that motivates him to help someone next day, right? And so appreciating people is truly important, I would say, in any work environment. Yeah. That's definitely, I don't see any reason why we should not appreciate some people. Everyone's capacity is not same. Some people will, contribute in a faster manner, some people will contribute in a slower manner, but are they really doing what they're supposed to do, right? That's like important thing. And are we helping them to be motivated enough to work? That's another important things. I truly agree with you.
And make it fun.
I Yeah, make it fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. It's a great quality to make things, make things funny, right? It's great quality. Not everyone can do it, to be honest, and it is definitely helpful. Um, so one thing I think this would be my one of my last question to you. Um, like, as I deal with many mentees, right, many freshers or someone who is really trying to get into system and getting interviewed, right? Even from active professionals, I also hear that people has a certain fear for interview, right? You have interviewed and appeared in many interviews in the past, right? um, Share your experience and suggestion for others to overcome the interview fear.
Okay. I've been on both sides of that chair. I've interviewed people. I've been interviewed.
Yeah.
I've done it so many times. Again, like I said, make it fun. I Interviews are kind of fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing to consider is that you know the the best possible outcome is you get the job. A better outcome is that you learn something while you're interviewing, because you're going to learn, what are people expecting you to know. You might learn that they'll want you to do 5 different positions, of which one of which you know. I know front end automation. I now know API, and then somebody will say, oh, and security testing and load testing, you can do that too. I'm like, no, it may
Mm-hmm.
not be what I'm looking for. But every interview is a practice. You're going to take notes, write down what you learn. If there's a terminology, if there's an acronym that you don't know, write it down immediately. Go and Google it, find or ask ChatGPT. It'll tell you exactly what it is very quickly. Be relaxed. Be relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
and I try to tell people. I say, look, I know it's stressful. I'm going to make this really relaxing for you. In fact, what I do on some of my interviews, I'll say, I'm going to ask you about 20 questions, one of which you're going to say, what the heck was he talking about? Now, this is just my interviewing style. I'll say, you pick one question that you didn't know. I want to make sure that you learn something out of this. And I'll tell you what the answer is that I'm expecting out of 25. Almost nobody does that. I might be the only one over there, but they almost always ask me the same question. So I don't give away all my questions by answers. But I do try to make sure that, even if we don't pick you as a person, I want you to be able to learn something while you're going. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the other things I learned is that I do this, and I've heard this in the industry. They'll ask you one question which is just wrong. I mean, it's for me, it's like, oh, so tell me about this record and playback stuff on the automation. How much do you do that? And I think record and playback is just the fastest way to get stuff done, and we really need somebody who knows how to do that really well. Obviously, you've been
Mm-hmm.
watching this video here. I'm not a fan of that. It's only in one area. So I've actually asked a
Mm-hmm.
question that I'm looking to see if someone's going to push back and say, well, I heard this guy Paul say record and playback isn't good unless I'm trying to learn a brand new language, and I've used this tool to use record and playback, and I learned this language, but I really almost never use it. Consider
Mm-hmm.
at least one question during the interview, something that you might have to support and say, no, that's not really the way I suggested, or it's something that says it's not the way the industry usually does it, but here's the reasons why I do it differently. Um, one final example I'll give you, because most people don't want to hear someone who says yes to everything. You want some sort of background. So I'll give you one last example before we wrap up here, which is that in automation, they'll talk about how you wait for a page. They'll say, you have to do either let's see, a fluent wait, or what are the other two? There's fluent wait. Uh, well, I'm sorry. There's 3 different ways of doing waits. And
Mm-hmm.
hey,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, when you get older, you can't remember all the words that are coming here. I hate to say it. It will come to me almost 10 minutes after this interview. But
Mm-hmm.
there's 3 different ways of doing weights. I don't hardly use any one of them. I don't use intrinsic weights or
Implicit weight.
yeah, correct. I don't
Mm-hmm.
use all 3 of them. I came up with a completely different way of doing a weight. I basically say I have a method that's embedded inside of our click, and every time I do a click, the next thing I do inside that click is I'll say, count how many elements are on the page. Well, the page is currently building, so there's all sorts of different counts of things until the page settles, and it's like, okay, it's done. So what I'll do is I'll go through a little loop and say, how many pages objects are on the page? Well, right now it's 1. How many? And I'll wait a quarter second. Now that also says, hey, there's a wait. You're waiting a quarter second. Like, yes, it's like salt in a soup. Don't use it everywhere. But all
Mm-hmm.
my waits are always less than 1 second. So you wait, and then you count it again. How many elements are on the page now? 1/4 of a second later, there's 3. Okay, how many are there now? There's 3. How many are there now? It's 3. So it went from 1 to 3 to 3. Once I get a count of the elements that are 3 times on there, at that point I go, okay, I'm pretty sure the page is done building. I don't have to go and check to see, is the element visible, is it clickable,
Mm-hmm.
it, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, or its properties or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, let's burn a little bit of time between our clicks until the page is done. And if I can get it done in 3/4 of a second, that's great. And if it's still building, I know that I should wait because most likely the next elements I'm going to interact with, they may not still be on there. Automation goes really fast. I don't want to throw that error.
Mhm.
So when I do an interview, I'll mention that and I'll say that's the way I usually do a page wait. It's different from anybody else out there. Nobody really ever says that. Everyone else gives those other three answers. So
I see.
that the last thing I'll say is that there are three for almost every question you're asked. There are three different answers you're going to get. They're looking
Mhm.
for one of three questions. One is the newbie who says, how do you wait for a page? Well, I put in a sleep. That's the newbie answer.
Mhm.
The intermediate guy is going to say, oh, the way I do it is I use an implicit wait, explicit wait, or a fluent wait. And then you get
Mhm.
the expert guy who goes, by the way, there's this really goofy way that I came up and it's pretty accurate and it's pretty easy to implement. And this is how I do it. And that's the expert level guy. And that's what everybody's looking for. So in an interview, be prepared to know, what is the answer. That's going to be somebody who's a newbie, novice, someone who's intermediate, and what's the
Mhm.
crazy answer out there that very few people know. And go find yourself a mentor and learn as much as you can from someone who's got all these years experience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I see. No, thank you, thank you. It was very insightful. The examples you shared, it may not be very generic to many other industries, but for definitely tech industries like especially QAs and others, it's where they can definitely relate with the examples you shared, right? Looking after the different ways of thinking, right? Having the three different types of answers, right? It's a really good way to actually learn and answer, right? Because when you appear some interviews and things like that, you really need to understand your ability, right? If you know you are going to answer mid-level, that's perfectly fine, but you need to be aware where you are standing, right? What is, because that shows, then your confidence will be expressed according to that, right?
Mhm.
But one of the common thing I tell people, right, when with regards to interview, right, I tell people, think about, you meet with a very unknown person today, and then what do you really do with that person? You start a basic conversation, then you maybe make some good environment to talk, and then you keep talking more details, right? And the way you can make that conversation beautiful is being truthful, being transparent, being confident, right? Being natural. Don't say things you don't know. Don't act in a way what you are not, right? You might not be having that level of expertise, then why should you act like that, right?
Mhm.
More you remain natural, transparent when you talk, the things becomes more easy, because the person who is sitting the other side of the table or other side of the camera, they really understand the tone. They're experienced individual in the industry,
Mhm.
right? We all want to know what is your capacity, actually, not how long you are here or things like that. So as long as you can talk about your capacity in a way what you really know, so you must know actually before you go to certain environment, and be truthful and talk straightforward, right? And that's like make bring things, that makes things good, right? In my case, I usually tell, being a professional in this industry, you should be always ready for interview. You should not have to take a preparation, because what will be in your interviews, what you are doing, right? Whatever you are doing, people will ask you similar things, talk about this, talk about that, right? And then why you have to have a separate preparation for an interview? That's how you actually build your confidence over the time. As you feel, I'm always ready for interview, you are actually breaking that fear, right? And moving ahead. That's actually my way of saying it.
It's fear of the unknown. It's there. I will tell you, on almost every interview, they're going to ask you 10
Mhm.
questions, and three of them are going to be super easy. The middle ones are going
Mhm.
to be middle, and then there's going to be three that they're like, if anybody gets these questions, good
Mhm.
luck. They're they get those right. That's incredible. And what you have to do is write down those last three questions and learn from it. One person I asked them, I said, what's a regular expression? And they said, you mean as opposed to an irregular expression? And I'm like, no. However, keep this in mind. Just because you get one question wrong, or you say, "Hey, there's one or two things that I don't know." If you get 8 of them right, they know that you can learn the other two. It. Doesn't immediately kick you out of the interview. It means if you know 80% of what it is, and I got to teach you the other 20%, I'm good with that. I'm afraid of the
Mhm.
guy who knows 20%, and I got to teach him 80%. And I'm like, oh, okay, let me just talk to a few other people. And that's really what interviews are all about. Just they're looking for someone who's 70, 80%, and then can
Mhm.
grasp the other 20, 30%.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. So I think we are towards the end.
Yes.
Paul, I truly, thank you. I truly thank you for being here. And for the listeners, thank you for listening to our guest, Paul Grossman. Thank you, Paul, for being here and sharing your journey. Indeed, your words shall help many those who dreamings of the heights, dreaming of the highest of the high. I hope people has enjoyed it, and over the time, those who will be listening, they'll be getting benefit out of it. Do you have any last moment thought for the audience?
Just keep
Any
keep it
two cents or
keep it
so?
fun. Keep it fun. Okay. Have a little bit of fun. Keep find something that you love to do, and you'll never work a day in your life. That's my best advice to you, everybody.
Thank you very much. It is definitely insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, words are more powerful than swords. So, this show will keep the commitment to spread good words among all of you. Keep spreading the good. Bye for tonight, and see you in the next episode. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.